Hello and welcome, everybody, to another episode of Coaching from the Heart with myself, Tyler Thurman, and my amazing friend, colleague, and co-host, Harold Feddersen.
Hi,
Hey,
Tyler.
Harold. Hey, it's good to see you. Good to be back with you again this Thursday, as we are most Thursdays. So the topic for today's show is resistance to well-being. And we just want to give a quick shout out to one of our amazing listeners. And I'm sorry if I butcher your name, but I believe it's Antje, for requesting this topic. So this one goes out to you. Now, before we jump into the topic at hand, I just want to give people a place where they can find both Harold and myself, as we are both transformative coaches, professional coaches, and we walk people through their spiritual journeys. So if you're interested, reach out to us, and we'd love to support you in that way. You can find me at www.coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com. And Harold, what's your handle?
I am you can find me at www.haroldfeddersen.ca.
Fantastic.
Definitely
Easy peasy. Yeah, no
easy
problem.
peasy.
Okay, well, let's dive into it. So, resistance to well-being. I actually love this topic because it's so relevant to our day-to-day lives, I feel like, because I think anybody that's really been on any kind of spiritual journey or path of discovery or just self-discovery, right? This is another way of talking about it. Has come across the idea of this thing. Sometimes I talk about it as innate well-being. That kind of comes from the three principles community, or innate health, or innate mental health. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about it as essence or deeper truth. But we could just talk about it as kind of a peace of mind, right? A general beautiful experience of life on the inside. So that it's a nice idea. So the idea is that is the very truth of who we are. That's our deeper nature. Every single one of us, we've got that hardwired, and that's not our experience of life 100% of the time. Maybe not even a small percentage of the time, right? And so that idea seems foreign at first glance oftentimes, because it's like, well, how could that exist? And yet I live a lot of my life struggling, with stress or worry or fear, anger, resentment, all those really fun emotions. um, and the answer to that is some form of resistance, right? There's really a couple kinds of answers, right? Because an easy one is, well, we're just taught from a very early age to think against our well-being. And I say that very specifically because that's kind of what we do, right? We get our mind all in a tizzy, and it kind of covers over that deeper truth, right? That's one of the reasons it's a deeper truth, is it can get covered over by more superficial type thinking or ego thinking. But the resistance, it's a really interesting conversation, because why would we resist well-being? It's a curious thing, right? Because the easy answer is, I don't think we would if we knew we were doing it. And that's kind of at the heart of it, really, is we haven't seen in the moment that we are choosing something else. Okay? Because if we were really truly presented with a choice, which there is actually a choice, it's just unavailable to us a lot of the time. If it really looked like, oh, you know what, today I'm not quite sure what flavor of experience I want. You know what, I could have, on one hand, misery and upset and depression and stress and frustration, or over here I could have beauty and love and peace of mind and just contentment. I wonder which one I'm going to choose. No, it doesn't occur to us like that, right? So the choice isn't then obvious. If it was like that, it would be a non-issue, I would think. And so I'm kind of rambling a little bit, Harold. So why don't you say something else about this?
I'm just fascinated because I don't know if it's just language or we actually if we look at this differently.
Yeah, it could be. We'll see. We'll see where we get with it.
Okay, so I'll dance a little bit here and see if our if my jive matches with your tango.
Fantastic.
I don't think people know that you're an amazing dancer, do they? Is that common knowledge?
Oh gosh,
Um,
I'm a little out of practice, but yeah, once upon a time.
um, so in our training, with regards to well-being, it was about we had a checklist of 10 things that you're supposed to do every day. And we had these categories, spiritual, physical, recreational, emotional, whatever. And so from that perspective, it was about doing something to support our well-being. So
Sure.
let's say it's walking, that's good for the body, good for the mind. Let's say it's meditation, that's good for the mind, creates space. But I think the thing that is valuable is not actually the doing, it's the nourishing. So the word nourishing has been really strong for me the last few days, thinking about our topic today. Because I think that's really, because to say, well-being, it's what does that really mean? And for me, it means nourished. Like, do you have a sense of nourishment? Because sometimes, so when we look at our life and we ask ourselves, is this nourishing me, or is this not? It's easy to get into the conversation about, am I satisfied? Which is different than being nourished. So to give an analogy would be food. So like a chocolate bar, right, might really satisfy me, but I don't feel nourished from a chocolate bar. So it's for me, our filling our well-being, so to speak. I don't really like that language, but it's a nourishment. Like it's a deep nourishment where we feel restored. We feel like reconnected to, our innate well-being, I think is how you put it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like
So
that connected to. Yeah, because it's and it can be a definite semantic thing, right? Because it's just our culture means a lot of different things when they say well-being too, right?
mhm.
So, and I think it's going to be valuable for our listeners and our viewers to have this conversation on different levels, right? Like the physical thing is not irrelevant, but I do think when I had it in mind, and kind of one of the communities that I come from, the Three Principles community, they definitely meet it in a more of a spiritual context, right? That sort of that deeper experience of life that in our training, like you said, we actually use the word essence. Now we use the word well-being in our training too, but it meant something a little bit different, I think. Um, and so it's going to be valuable to learn about on different levels, but to me, when I'm looking at my well-being, a convenient replacement. I really like your word nourishment, actually. But I just put peace of mind in there, right? There's something, for me, there's something beautiful. Like, we totally undersell peace of mind in our society. And I think it's because most people's experience of peace of mind is more of a less stress, right? It's not really any kind of deeper experience, if you will. And so I just wanted to point to kind of, where I'm going with the language of well-being. Because we could talk about your physical fitness, your nutrition, and I think while all those things are relevant and important to having a wonderful life, that's just not where I was coming from. So,
And I think, I don't use that checklist very often with clients at all,
yeah.
because most people turn it into, it's a checklist. So it's like, I went running today, but I don't feel any different. I did the thing, and they check in. They're like, look, I did the thing, and it just becomes a task. But the
Yeah.
like you said, the value of the physical act, whether walking or meditation were the examples. It's whether or not it's nourishing. Like, that's the vehicle through which you access the nourishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can almost flip it, right? From having it be this strategy, this, like the list that you write down, the things that you should do and that are good for you. And, oh, look, see, I did those things. And in my experience, it can be much more of an effect of getting in touch with something deeper.
Hmm.
Now, it does. That's not to say it can't sometimes work the other way around. But my experience of any kind of lasting experience of well-being is we do more of that kind of stuff when we're well in our being,
Hmm.
um, and that's a fundamental difference, I think.
And that's a beautiful flip too, because one of the most common questions that I ask is, what do you need? What do you need? Which is starting not from the activity, but from the inside. What do I need? What kind of nourishment am I, how am I
Yeah.
blocking myself from the essence of my being?
Yeah. So now I think Antje was talking about sort of the mental aspect, right? So I'd like to just address um, the resistance part, right? Because we talked a little bit about what we mean by well-being or innate well-being, and the the resistance part is kind of funny, right? Because a lot of people, we don't experience ourselves as well very often. Oftentimes the closest we get is kind of numbed out to life, right? Because that's really how we know um, to get away from those things that look like stressors in our life. But if you look at it from kind of a mind perspective, right? And if you just consider, okay, we've got this essential part of ourselves um, that sometimes I talk about as peace of mind, sometimes love, sometimes um, we could call it nourishment. I like that. Uh, but it's just a beautiful experience, right? And let's just pretend for a moment, for those of you suspend your current beliefs about reality, let's pretend that everybody has access to that 100% of the time, no matter what. Then why the heck don't we experience that even close to that much of the time? And as I kind of explore that, for myself, one of the things that I find helpful is going back to our conversation that you and I had, Harold, about kind of the victim mentality, right? And really, to me, it's about, that is a conversation about where is the source of not only the well-being, but also whatever the interference with the well-being would be. All of the stress, fear, anxiety, upset, all of those other experiences that don't feel like well-being. Where do those come from? And it strikes me that when it looks an awful lot like it's true that I'm a victim of circumstance, in meaning whatever's happening outside in the world of form is causing me to feel this way, causing me to have this internal experience in my mind. When it looks like that, there's no choice involved, right? Because if it really looks that way, then there wouldn't be a choice, right? Because it's cause effect. That thing out there happened. I have I don't have much say in what happened out there, right? I have some, but not a ton. And so then when I'm seeing myself in that light, it's just going to engender resistance naturally because of that deeper context of victimhood, right? And I don't necessarily mean a victim of another person. It's just literally anything out there that looks like is causing my experience. And then on really all there is to do about that is open up to exploring a different possibility, the being willing to dive a little deeper and see maybe this isn't actually how it works, so that you can get back into that driver's seat, not of like control, like I'm controlling my experience, but just to a place of decision making. In other words, okay, I've got this innate well-being thing, and if I kind of know in the back of my mind, the only reason I would ever not experience that is something to do with my mind, something to do with my thinking, something to do with the story I'm telling myself. Maybe I'm playing some memory loop over and over again. If I know that it's on some level, it's got to be coming from me, because that's where the source of our experience comes from, then we can begin to slowly let go of, a little bit at a time, don't have to do big chunks, what we've learned to do, which is think of a lot of really shitty thinking, which is just, that's how the resistance manifests, right? It's thought, right? We think our way out of it. But if we don't know that, then we can't, there's nothing to do, but we can't explore it further, right? We can't investigate deeper if we just stop at, okay, I'm the victim of this circumstance, and therefore I must be afraid in this situation, or I must be stressed in this situation. We're just going to stop there. So, Harold, do you have anything? I'd love for you to just comment on
I think
and argue with me if you need to,
I think
because it's good for radio and video.
um, with regards to the resistance, I think there are a couple aspects. One you touched on earlier, which is the conditioning um, that we're sort of given. We're raised
Sure.
for the most part by ignorant and blind uh, people. Even though
Yeah, it's the
I
blind. That's
love,
the blind leading the blind. Yeah,
yeah, I love my parents. Don't get me wrong.
and it's innocent. Yeah, I think that's what you're speaking to. Is
Yeah,
it's
so we're
innocent.
we're just trained, like as you said, we're trained not to look at ourselves from a place of well-being. Like we're not, we don't ask our children, what can we do to nourish you? We're like, go do this, clean your room, stop doing that. Um, so part of it is that, which I think is what you're talking about, the conditioned way of being that we have in the world. And I think the other one that we inevitably come up against, because it's the most prevalent in our society, is at some point you're going to come up against the root negative belief structure that you have, which is in some form that you are unworthy, not valuable, unlovable. And so when we know intellectually that, let's say, walking nourishes us and being in nature somehow restores us to an original state, so to speak. When we know that intellectually and we don't do it, there's a discord within us. And so, what is the root cause of the discord? In my experience, both my personal experience and my experience over the last number of years with people, is that there's this root condition that we just don't deserve. We just don't deserve to be in that natural state. We
Right.
always should be doing something else, or we create some story about time or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's usually where the conversation enters when someone has decided to sort of commit to the well-being
Yeah.
restoration.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And for all of you Course of Miracles students out there, what you were just speaking to, Harold, the I don't deserve it bit. The reason for that, according to A Course in Miracles, is uh, we have attempted to separate from God and therefore are deserving of punishment. And we don't really want to be punished by God, so we're going to do it ourselves, so he'll back off a little bit. And if you're not a student of A Course in Miracles, just ignore that bit. Because it sounds crazy, but
It's funny. I was gonna look up because admittedly I don't know anything about the three principles, and I thought, should I look that up? Because I know Anja had mentioned it, and you are familiar with that. But I thought, you know what? I just actually want to be in the mystery of this with you. So I decided I chose the mystery.
yeah, and for those of you out there who are like 3P, what 3%? it's it really just is a first of all, it comes from an enlightened Scottish welder named Sydney Banks, who has since passed away. But really, if you want to explore the three principles, check out Sydney Banks first, because a lot of the stuff on the three principles these days, like anything in the world, so I'm not poo-pooing the three principles, anything in the world that becomes sort of a field of study, it gets diluted the bigger it gets, right? It's gotten big in the last 5 years, bigger, much bigger. And so there's plenty of people out there who they're just spouting rhetoric, But really, it was just this guy who saw a deeper truth behind life. And one of the ways he talked about it was using these three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, which really he just used as descriptions for things that we can rely on no matter what, outside, regardless of what's going on in our physical universe. We can rely on these foundational things that are essentially the building blocks of our experience of life, right? There's always a mind involved. There's always thought, not necessarily thinking, but thought, the principle of thought, and then consciousness, which just we we seem to be aware, right? We seem to be somewhat awake to life, but that's actually not entirely true, because there's a lot going on that we don't see. But yeah, for those of you, I know sometimes I'm guilty of just going, oh, three principles, and then I realize people have no idea what I'm talking about. So
See, and I didn't know Sydney Banks, because you speak about Sydney Banks fondly and often. I didn't know Sydney Banks was actually the originator of the three principles. So
yeah,
huh.
and I wish I had gotten to know him personally, but like any enlightened individual would tell you, there was nothing special about him. He simply saw something that we haven't yet seen as deeply as he did. And so that's kind of why you and I, Harold, have these conversations, right? So we can see things even just a little bit more clearly, or just kind of just wake up just a little bit more from all of these illusions and delusions that we fall under their spell too. You were just speaking about them as kind of belief structures, right? Negative belief structure as part of that resistance conversation, and really that's just more of that, right? Just belief is another. Is what was it Abraham used to say? But a belief is just a thought that we keep thinking. Uh, and I like the simplicity of that because it can sound complicated and and scary, and I don't know how to deal with a belief, but really we just look at it and we see, oh, it's just made of thought, right? And then we can begin to let it go. The more clearly we see that, because one of the scary things, we've had a conversation about beliefs, right? But I think it's always relevant because beliefs look true. They just look true, right? It's the weird nature of beliefs, right? It's okay, I believe this, and it's like it's got this sleight of mind capacity to make things look true, like solid, factual, you know. And oftentimes they're not even close to that, right? They're a complete figment of our imagination. But somewhere along the line, we began investing our mental energy into certain thought systems. And oftentimes it's so unconscious. It's not anybody's fault, right? If your parents tell you again and again you're a worthless piece of what, it's gonna take at some point, probably. And you're gonna start to believe that. But then here's the kicker, then you forget that you believe it, right? But you still keep believing it. And so
You still
the
keep
issue
living
is,
your life as though it's true.
yeah, and so it really is an excavation expedition, right? It's an uncovering, um, and that's what this conversation of resistance is all about, right? It's let's all just slow down a little bit and look at our experience of life a little bit more closely, with a little bit more of an open mind, maybe a little bit more curiosity and some willingness, and you're going to see some things that you haven't seen before about your experience. You're gonna see you know how those beliefs get to thrive? They get to thrive because they're hidden, right? If you see it and you really look at it, you kind of just like you dig it up and you dust it off, and you might wash it off a little bit and you see, oh, that's complete BS. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to go poof right away necessarily and never revisit your life again. But you start to look at it more closely and you get to see a deeper truth, which is, oh, that's just a thought structure. And I don't need to keep feeding that with energy and attention in the same way that I have been without knowing that I have been. And in my experience, that's a lot of how our resistance begins to wane a little bit, is we just see what we're doing a little bit more clearly. I actually had a conversation with a client the other day, and I think I first heard this from Michael Neal, but it was relevant to her situation, where I said, if there was a patient, right, seeing a doctor, and he went in and he had a hammer and was repeatedly hitting himself on the head and said, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Your knee jerk would be to tell them, as the doctor, or even just a helpful human being, hey, stop that. That's not helping you. That's hurting you. But if you look a little bit more deeply, you'll see, okay, the only reason anybody would do that is, one, they're insane. Two, they don't see what they're doing. They don't know what's going on. They're hitting themselves on the head, but they don't know they're hitting themselves on the head. So you might gently try to point out to them what's going on there. And really, that's a lot of what my coaching looks like, right? Is gentle pointing and uncovering, right? Let's look at this thing that you haven't seen as clearly as you could. And that, I love that analogy, because it points to the notion that we don't really resist well-being actively, like consciously. It's just it's kind of a misunderstanding. It's kind of like, okay, if I had the whole picture here in super clarity, I probably wouldn't continue to do that. Now, there's probably some habitual stuff that takes a little bit longer to let go of. But Harold, I see that you're biting at the bit, so jump in there.
Yeah, because I actually think we actually do. We sabotage ourselves all the time. There's a was it last week we talked about capacity? Yeah, capacity with regards to love.
Yeah.
There's a capacity too for well-being. When you feel nourished, how long are you willing to stay nourished before you sabotage yourself in some form? And it usually comes in a thought form, right? All our behavior comes mostly from our thoughts and our conditioning, um, but we actually have, I think if you're given a choice, a lot of people would say, yes, I want to be in the deepest part of my well-being. That's what I want. But
Sure.
if you look at their actions and their life, absolutely that's not what they want. Because there's
Right.
often
Yeah,
that discord.
it's not a reflection. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we only, as humans, we only do what we value. Plain and simple. We do what we value. So if what you value
Sure.
currently is not what you say you value, then there's a discord in which you need to enter. You need to enter that discord to find out
Right.
what the value is in what you're doing. So if walking in nature you say is valuable for you, but you're not doing it, then there's actually a value that currently is stronger for you that you're blind to because you think in your mind, you're like, oh, well, of course, yes, I want to do that. I just, I can't, I don't have time or whatever. There's some sort of story going on.
Right.
So, so
Right.
that's where you actually need to enter into the
Yeah.
waters.
Actually, I think we're in agreement because you really are pointing towards that deeper inquiry, and I really think about it in terms of the sort of that victim mindset. You know, we do, because you and I have talked about quite a lot how much value we find in being victims,
Hmm.
right? How good that feels.
It's
That,
juicy.
like, it's juicy that, we joke, but that self-righteous those feelings of being, um, you know, I'm right and you're wrong, and you did this to me, and it's not on me, you know. I didn't have anything to do with it. We do love that. But what we don't know is what we give up to have that.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm talking about in that because we're really on the same page, I think.
Mm.
I'm just pointing towards a very deep level, really, where we don't know. We can't be in a space of deep and profound love and peace and be victims and be self-righteous and be, sometimes I give people the choice. You can be right or you can be happy. Can't be both, usually. um, yeah, go ahead.
I think there's also there's this trap that we run into often with spiritual seekers. Uh, this is
There's
a little.
traps in spiritual seeking. I didn't know. No, I'm just kidding.
They're like mouse traps.
It's a minefield, Harold. It's a minefield.
Because we can. So in with regards to this, uh, so walking in nature nourishes us. Nourishes us. We'll just say that's our thing. We can get trapped in the, why am I not doing this then? That's really interesting, and we get in this little mind circle, and it's valuable to see what you're doing, but you don't have to get into the trap of it. If you know walking in nature nourishes you,
Yeah.
get off the chair and go walk in nature. Forget about all the reasons why you're not, or what. Just do it. Go out and do it. Go get nourished. Fill
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've been in that mind space, right?
Oh, me too. Many times.
Plenty. And 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 yet more and more my experience is um, more of a choice. Uh, more and more, but certainly not all the time, right? um, But more and more, I I can begin to notice that, because I think there's almost a difference in the mind space there, right? One is sort of it is a trap, right? It's, and you could even say it's an ego trap, because the ego mind is in love with victimhood, right? And whatever the opposite of well-being is, right? Misery.
Well, the trap, it's a trap because while you're in it, you're not being nourished,
Well, absolutely,
right?
right.
You're
So
in it.
I
It's a
think,
fancy way of separating yourself from what you need.
so I love that you brought that up, because that's relevant, right? And we can even catch ourselves doing that. Um, and then there's this other thing, this other place of truth where you can begin to see, um, I'm choosing to have the experience of being a victim. And until I see what I've given up to have that, because like you said, it's valuable. It feels so damn good, right? To stand in your righteous anger, your justified anger. Oh man, that feels good. Right? Everybody out there's got to know, right? You know what I'm talking about. But it's not as wonderful as our well-being. But it sure looks and feels good. But we don't know it's one or the other. It's not, I'm going to use this righteous anger as a tool to get to my well-being. Right? Doesn't work like that.
No.
Right? To forge the world the way I need it to be so I can be happy. So I totally am in agreement. And I think there's also a different place that's not a trap of just a deeper seeing, right? It's not really this thought inquiry conversation. It's just, oh, I see. Oh, it's so clear. I'm gonna go for a walk.
And it's also, it's common when we feel that nourished or when we feel our well-being is taken care of, we actually we can see things clearer than when we're
Yeah,
not
it works.
walk,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
maybe, if you want to go to why don't I do this? Oh, this is so juicy. Why don't I actually, you just you go for the walk, and it might be revealed to you in some sense too.
Harold, we're really promoting walking. I think we should start a walking
I
group.
think I think we should start a walking in nature club.
No, I'm poking a little fun just because um, I know what you mean, but I also know people can get confused. They can confuse the form, right? They can be like, oh, Harold and Tyler are saying I need to walk more, right? No, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, you probably, most likely you
you,
do.
you probably do. If you're a human being, you probably need to move your body more. But no, it's not about the form necessarily, right?
The form is
It,
just giving us access to, or
yeah,
it's the way that we're filling our cup, so to speak.
yeah, and there's plenty of instances where we can go for a walk and our mind continues to race and we continue to be afraid and fear. It's not like this thing that will fix my internal experience.
It's
It,
not a checklist, yeah.
yeah, it absolutely goes back to the checklist thing. And in the words of A Course in Miracles, it's confusing form and content, right? We're we're trying to speak as best we can descriptively, not prescriptively. I think I'm putting words in your mouth, Harold, but
Well,
I know I am.
you really do need to, because it changes. Sometimes what will nourish us is the walk in nature. Sometimes what nourishes us will to be sit on our cushion and meditate. Sometimes what nourishes us is to go out and be with new people or be with old friends or you have to, you know what the vessel is, or the form is.
Right.
You know.
And importantly also, the source is always within. Um, but yeah, you guided, I feel guided to take walks and runs and naps.
Yeah.
You know, all that kind of stuff. Like, um, but there's a deeper truth going on behind it. And if you're really stuck in that well-being, or that resistance, just honor it. You know, in fact, this can become another trap. Literally everything we're saying can become a trap of the ego. So now I know that sounds scary. It's really not, but it literally everything. I just, as a student of Course in Miracles, everything the Holy Spirit gives us, the ego can also use for its own devices, right?
Hmm.
And that's not some scary like devil angel thing. It's just different parts of our mind. Um, and all resistance really is, it's pushing against. It's a fight of some kind, but it's us against us. So sometimes just, you know, honor the resistance, honor the fight, right?
And go for a walk anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and the funny thing is, once you realize that it's a fight against yourself for yourself, you're probably not going to fight quite as hard, or you might fight harder. But it's not that complicated. It's just one of my teachers used to say, "There's never more to do, or there's nothing to do. There's just more to see." But that doesn't mean don't go for the walk or to the gym, or don't eat eat in the way that nourishes your body. Because that it's so funny. Oftentimes people hear that and they're like, "Oh, so you're saying don't do anything?" No, again, we're speaking descriptively, not prescriptively. We're pointing towards this beautiful thing behind life, and then this thing that we do to kind of fuck it up. Pardon my language. um, but we don't know that we do it, so it can be helpful to check that out. And in my experience, just the more you explore it with not so seriously. Right? One of the things I love, one of my teachers, Ken Wapnick, one of probably the most prolific teachers of A Course in Miracles, he used to say, "You know how you know you're making progress in this course? If you don't take it seriously." And I just love that, because we take life so damn serious, and our experience so serious, and our thinking, and our beliefs, and our values, and our beliefs about our beliefs, and our values about our values.
Our beliefs about our values.
And our thinking about our beliefs and our beliefs and our values. It's just, yeah, just let it go a little bit. Turn those cheekbones up. Smile a little bit more. Just, I can't remember where this saying comes from, but have you heard it, Harold? Uh, Don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out alive.
Yeah.
Can't remember where that comes from, but I always loved that, because it's cheeky, and but it's true, right? We're all in this together. The Course in Miracles says, be kind to everyone you meet, for everybody's fighting a hard battle in their minds. It's the same battle you're fighting. Different form, same content. Anything else you want to say about resistance, Harold? Resistance to well-being.
Mm-hmm. You know, at the end of the day, it comes down to the understanding that you deserve to have that connection and to have your cup filled. And so for me, it usually comes into a conversation of, are you willing to love yourself? Or do
I
you want
love
to
that.
continue to struggle against life?
Right. Because, yeah, I love that. I love that because resistance is whatever we use as a tool for resisting life. It's not loving ourselves. Right? It's not loving to ourselves to do that. And yeah, it's our birthright, man. Like nobody is not deserving of love. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did that work out? These damn double negatives, anyways.
Yeah.
I
Everyone
did.
deserves love.
I never paid attention to in grammar class. So yeah. It's no matter what you think you've done to sin against the world or God. You know, I love the language personally. I used to hate it, just to put it in context. I love the language that we are all children of God and we are all deserving of that unconditional love that is just an extension of spirit. And so check that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Check in with yourself.
yeah, because everybody, including Harold and myself, we get in those spaces where we think we're worthless pieces of shit, right? We're just like you. There's nothing special. It's just there's you can develop a deeper facility for seeing that resistance and the capacity for well-being, like you said, Harold. Fill up your cup.
Mm-hmm.
And it will also be filled for you spiritually. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for joining Harold and I for another fun conversation. I sure enjoyed it. With coaching from the heart. And just a reminder again, Harold and I, professional coaches, transformative coaches. And if this conversation, you enjoyed it and you want more, reach out to either of us. One of us will resonate more than the other for you. I guarantee it. So reach out to that one, and we won't take it personal. So and we'd be happy to walk on this journey with you on a more personal level. And you can find me at www.coachtylerthurman, that's tylerthurman.blogspot.com. And Harold?
www.haroldfeddersen.ca. And there's a new, I have a new post and a new video out.
Fantastic. And if you're wondering, the CA, Harold's really cool because he lives in Canada. So, okay, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you next time. So, with all the love in your heart and your mind, take care.